Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Acting Related, the My Site Actor podcast. I'm Frank Prendergast and today I'm chatting to comedian Laura O Mahony, who is a children's television presenter on Body Brothers for RTE Junior. She was a member of sketch comedy troupe Cccahoots, and before lockdown hit, she was due to perform her new show, The People's Princess, to a full house at the Everyman Theatre. Hot Press said that her humour is charged with a vibrant energy, and that is something that is just true of Laura, full stop. I'll be chatting to Laura about forging your own path, growing an audience online. Laura is going to share some insights into what it's like as a woman in the Irish comedy scene right now, and her plans for bringing The People's Princess back next year even stronger. Okay, let's chat. So Laura, thank you so much for coming on to have a chat.
It's a pleasure. The minute I saw you were doing a podcast, I was like, I'm getting on that.
And I'm delighted to be chatting to you today because, so I've been I know I was saying some of this to you already, but I've been thinking a lot lately about like exactly why I started the podcast and like why I choose the guests I do and kind of what it's all about. Because I had like when I started it, I had an instinct, but I suppose I actually didn't really question it very deeply as exactly what I was up to. And I've kind of realized that I heard someone being asked like ages ago, and I've completely forgotten who it was, but I think it was someone in the film industry, and they were being asked about like, how do you get people's attention? You know, people at the top, how do you get their attention so that you can climb the ladder, and how they can, you know, how people at the top can help you up if you get their attention, etc. And this person was saying that they just think that that's completely the wrong way to look at it. And actually, you should be looking around at your peers and what amazing things they're doing and helping each other up the ladder. And that really stuck to me, and I just thought it was brilliant. And then more recently, I was reminded of it because I went down a Duplass brothers rabbit hole. We were watching loads of their films, and then I heard a podcast where they were being interviewed, and they referenced a talk that Mark Duplass gave, I think in 2015. And the main point of the talk was the cavalry is not coming, and basically you just got to do it for yourself. 100%. And so in the my last podcast, I was chatting to Jodie O'Neill, and I was saying to Jodie that, you know, I feel that people say to actors all the time, just, you know, make your own work, make your own work, make your own work. And I'm like, that's like a phenomenal amount of work. And people say it as if it's like, just do it. And so I'm kind of coming around to it in a way of like, you just have to do it. You just have to make it happen. And, you know, sometimes like in theater, that can be a huge undertaking, but I'm just fascinated with what you're doing, which is you're just taking what's available, what you have, and you're making all this content and growing a huge audience.
Yeah, that's interesting. First of all, I haven't a clue who the Duplass brothers are, and I just kind of nodded along there going, oh, I know. I used all my former college training to pretend I knew. I'm very unschooled.
Very convincing, yeah.
I'll go Google them then, and I'll never watch anything by them. That's the kind of bad person I am.
They have some great films.
Oh, well, good. I'm not really a film person. So
really?
No, not particularly. No, I love some sad series. Get murdered. I suppose what's interesting is I would never ever call myself like a maker. That gives me the gawks. Of being a maker, I make my work. Gawk. That's just me, because I do respect that there are people that do refer to themselves as such, and they are makers. I am an improviser, I think, first and foremost. I have no desire to craft a script carefully or deeply rehearse something or anything. So what's happened with mine is, I wouldn't say accidental, but in a way I have stumbled into making content that I didn't actually intend to make. And I suppose Instagram is my playground mainly. And the thing about Instagram is I just do my stories. I just do what's going on in my day for the most part. And then it has also provided me the opportunity to play with a few characters. But like these are characters that live with me the whole time anyway. I remember when I was getting married to Shane, my husband, in 2012, somebody asked Shane, which Laura are you marrying? And Shane said, all of them. And I thought, well, there's always been a cast of Laura's. There are many characters that exist inside in my head. And so they kind of just come onto Instagram without me thinking. I don't think I've ever sat down and be like, I'm now going to do a sketch on Instagram. Only when I do my Irish-speaking character, Shun, I know that I'm going to do a sketch about her. But again, she's improvised. I never write her down.
Wow.
That's part of it for me.
She's great, by the way.
I love Shun. She's based on so many people. And she's totally improvised, and she shocks me all the time. Like, I'd have a notion of what her poem's going to be about, but I just ream it out, and then I give myself a fright. And that's, I think I started, we'll say, acting by doing improv classes. I thought I was in normal acting classes, and I suddenly realised, well, this isn't what everybody else starts with. I was actually in an improv class.
Right.
Heather Donoghue, actually, and I didn't realise. I thought everybody started from this point. Sure. I thought this thing you start by improvising. So therefore, I didn't start in a script-based class, and so I feel like all of my content is basically just me having the crack. But it has led to building up people that want to see me having the crack, which is great. But it's like, particularly during these pandemic times, a lot of it is to keep me entertained. It's for myself as well, because I'd go cracked here. Like I sometimes say to Shane, I'm like, God, I haven't had a clap in ages. Like, people were giving out about the clap for carers. I'm like, I'll take it. If people want to just that clap over, I'll take that. So like, I have to entertain myself, or I would go cracked, I think. Yeah. So a lot of it is born out of a need for me to have the crack, as opposed to me actively going, I'm now going to create content.
Sure. And so, because you have just been producing a phenomenal amount of Instagram stories during lockdown, and like the timing of it is interesting as well, from the perspective of, so you were a member of Cccahoots.
Correct.
And Cccahoots announced that they were no more on around when that was like the end of May, but obviously that was when it was announced. When was that actually?
I don't know. Like, I feel like, oh God, I loved Cccahoots so much, and it is very sad that it is over for now. I say for now because I'd never fully closed the door on it at all. Sure. Because we had such a ball and such a great chemistry. I suppose if we were being honest with ourselves, it had probably been fizzling for a few months, and we had all started to kind of follow our own paths a bit more. And it was hard with Cccahoots because, we had a lovely 3 episodes of the school, and I think we felt like maybe we might get more. And then when you don't, that's a bit of a knockback. And I'm not, the reasoning behind why we didn't get more is it just wasn't the right time, or, it was just a tricky one. And I suppose you have to eventually, and nothing can go on forever. And I feel like, out of all of us in Cccahoots, I would be the one that would like things to never end. I'm like that in life in general. I'm like, I don't want this phase to be over now at all. I want this to just go on indefinitely. Never question it. Never think that there's more or less out there. Just keep kind of blindly going. But I suppose the pandemic gave us a moment for pause and to decide that maybe it was time for a break. I think we have very similar comedic styles, but also very different. Right. And we have to have an opportunity to kind of chase our own style as well. Type an amazing one-man show. It's absolutely beautiful, which is comedic but also highly theatrical, and that hasn't had its full outing now as a result of the pandemic. So has legs, and he needs to be able to go and do that. Dom had vendors, obviously, and Dom has lots of kind of other theatrical interests. I think Dom enjoys being on stage very much. Like, favourite roles was being Michael Collins, and he was obviously amazingly suited to that. So he has that element of him. And then there's me, and I'm kind of like more of a Dunbelievables character. Like Cccahoots was a much smaller type of comedy in style than I would naturally be good at. But I think being in Cccahoots made me realise how fun it is to be that kind of smaller version of yourself as well. Whereas like there's a Billy Barry in me just waiting to kind of burst out. So I feel like I am interested then in pursuing my own stand-up. And so while you could do all of that within Cahoots, I think it would also dilute it for the three of us. And so we just have to give each other a break.
Sure.
And groups break apart. Like there's just, we're all at different stages in our minds, in our jobs, in our careers. I feel like as sad as it was to officially say goodbye to it, we didn't really want it to fizzle out without kind of calling, so that people are like, oh, remember them? They're just kind of gone. We didn't want that. So we came out and said it online or whatever. And then when you see online and people are like, oh my God, don't break up. There is a part of you that's like, we're mad.
Yeah.
But so I think it's the right time for us all. And we need a break. We need a break from the work. We probably need a break from each other. And we just need a break.
Sure. Yeah.
Steps. I always say we're Steps because I remember when Steps broke up, I did not remember that. But a couple of years later, they did this really dramatic documentary about getting back together, about like, will we be able to get back together? They thought they were the Beatles. And so I'm like, in years to come, we can always just do a kind of Steps documentary.
I look forward to that. Yeah.
Back together.
Yeah, because you mentioned there you started out studying acting. I know you first and foremost as an actor originally.
Yeah.
You would consider yourself a comedian now. Yes. But at the same time, like I know I've said this to you before, but like your performance in the Cahoots sketches is just wonderful. And I mean, I think a lot of comedians make such good actors because there's something about comedy that like you have to bring yourself fully to it. And then I think that translates really well to bringing yourself fully to a role. Like I was watching Self-Made on Netflix recently, and there was an actor in it, and she just had such an amazing performance. She was so present, she was so free, and I was like, wow, who is this? She's amazing. And I looked her up, and I don't like follow comedy that much, so I hadn't heard of her, but everyone else has, and it was Tiffany Haddish. And she,
hard to either, but frankly, I've heard of no one. Do you know?
She's on some of her, and I never watch stand-up stuff, but some of her stand-up stuff is on Netflix, and we had to look at it because we were so impressed with her in Self-Made, and she's one of those. She just tells stories. She just tells stories about herself, about her life, about what's going on with her, and she's just entertaining and funny. But anyway, but the main thing is that I just think there's something about comedy that makes for and it makes for really good actors because of that practice of like bringing yourself fully to the stage.
It's interesting because I definitely don't consider myself an actor at all. I would be a comedian first and foremost, but obviously a comedic actor as well. But I just think actor has connotations that probably aren't me. Do you know? Sure. I don't process. I can't go. You won't find me doing like warm up side stage. You'll probably find me messing, like puffing and being like, "Sorry guys, I have to do my spine rolls." I'll be like, "I'm gonna have glass of gin and then have a ball," which is totally not the actor's process. Stanislavski would be not impressed with me. Maybe he would because I'm so myself. But it's interesting you said there, like, when I was starting stand-up, I wrote this 7 minutes is kind of the thing in stand-up at the start. You have to have 7 minutes, right? So I wrote these 7 minutes. And there's only 2 people have seen it. One was my dad and the other was Kieran Birmingham. Beloved Kieran Birmingham. And it was terrible. It was terrible because I was writing kind of, observational comedy. And both of them said, Laura, just tell your own story. It's like, what do you do? I had this whole concept, and I'm just so glad it never saw the light of day because nobody would have laughed. So it was like the night before my first gig, I just threw it all out and was like, right, what's funny that's happened to me? And I just kind of concocted a list of stuff that had happened to me when I was smaller, as a teenager or whatever. And that was so much easier because I wasn't trying to be a fraud then. I was just myself. Yeah. These were just my stories. Like the majority of my stand-up in particular, like 95% of it is true. Like the only bits that aren't true maybe is a little tweak here and there for the punchline to be good. Yeah. But mine doesn't really have a punchline. Like,
sure.
When
yeah.
You're a stand-up, tell a joke. I'm like, I won't tell a joke because you need about 10 minutes to hear the middle and the end, and there isn't a punchline. But as well, I feel like with comedy, particularly actually with Cahoots as well, it was a unique opportunity to basically play myself all the time, a version of myself. And that is much, that's such a joy. It's so much easier than a script where you're like pretending to be someone. I think I said this to you before, like I was in a beautiful production of Spring Awakening. It was absolutely a gorgeous musical, very sad, very grim. And I was playing all the adult females. And there was one character, her daughter had an abortion, right? Very sad, very emotional scene. And a lot of the other cast were teenagers who were like so in touch with their emotions, and they were so amazing. They were actually a lovely cast to work with. But one of the nights got a tear out during the kind of abortion discussion scene. And like a normal actor who's in the moment wouldn't even have registered it. But I was like, I got a tear out. Look at that. I'm so amazing. This is in my head now. You're so amazing. Look at you. The audience, which just like goes to show that I'm not meant to be, I'm
but
not.
That's, I mean, I would say that's... I would say that's a fairly normal. I mean, I think every actor does that, but I mean, the trick is to come back from it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure I came back, but I was still like by myself in my head, and I just kind of felt always. I think as I got older, maybe I realised that there are like thousands of women better than me at acting in terms of like Peggy and Mike in the Playboy of the Western World, or any of the the big roles.
Sure,
I think I'd make a good Peggy and Mike, but. And they wanted more. I see in auditions, I see the hunger in people's eyes, and I'm there going, I don't have it. Because I don't want to do those roles. I want to basically be a version of myself as much as possible. And I suppose now I'm kind of merging into just actually being myself. End up, you're just Laura. Like, so.
And this is why this is kind of what I was talking about at the start as well, about like that, just figuring out what you want. And forging your own path.
And myself and she's a great comedian, Julie J. She is a dear friend of mine, and also a great sounding board, because we're very similar in our kind of moments. We have moments, and you could waste a lot of time being very negative and going, why does that comedian always get that? Or why does this comedian always get this? Or why am I not quite at this level? Or why am I not being called for this, that, and the other? And like what you were saying, we had a chat the other day, and you have to build it yourself. You have to make it so that people can't actually overlook you. Because if they overlook you, they seem demented. It's like, well, why did you hate that girl? So like, I could be beating down doors now going, oh, please let me into the comedy world. Whereas what I'm doing is I'm just making my own world. I'm making my own audience.
Yeah.
Hopefully that it will grow to such a point that then people that are booking kind of comedy roles or whatever will be like, well, we'll have to see her, because you can't write me because I'm there. And I think as well, there's a power in having built it yourself, because you're building a rapport with your audience then, as opposed to just being thrown at an audience and asked to be loved. You've put the work in.
Absolutely.
And like on Instagram, I think I said this to you, I unfortunately call my followers the gangbang. Don't ask me how. Know what it meant, and I realised what it meant this Christmas, and I nearly had a little heart failure moment. I asked them, were they okay with me? They were like, yeah, we're more than happy to be the gangbang. So, but them as a collective now, like I feel a maternal love for them, and I feel like I care about what's going on with them just as much as they care about what's going on with me, and I care about making them entertained. I don't want them to click onto Instagram and be like, oh God, Laura didn't post today, I hope she's all right. Like she dramatically left Instagram for a few days and do that every now and again to kind of keep them interested, but I want them to see stuff that they'll enjoy. And particularly in the pandemic times, I find a lot of comedians went down the bloody miserable route of like, isn't this desperate, and let's talk about how sad and bad the world is, and I'm just like, that's not our job. It's not our. If you want to do that, maybe go be a political analyst or whatever it is. But like, I feel as my job as a comedian is to make people laugh. So even if I'm not having a particularly great day, I think, I should still put some happy content out for the world. And as well, I think with Instagram, you have to be honest. So there are days when I'm not having a great day, and I'll tell them.
Sure.
I'll be like, today I cried in the utility room. Pity about me, I have a utility room. Do you know what I mean? So like, there are I just think as a comedian, your job is to make people laugh. And if you're not making people laugh, then you're not actually a comedian. And maybe you should be something else,
sure.
be a presenter or a journalist or whatever.
Yeah. So let's talk about like building an audience, because Cccahoots on Facebook had like 24,000 likes.
Sure did.
And that's kind of why I was interested in the timing earlier, because like with Cccahoots announcing that they were no more, lockdown happening, and then you used lockdown to hugely grow your own audience on Instagram. Like you have like over 5,000 people following you on Instagram. Like I think, how many did you have at the start of lockdown?
At the start of lockdown, and I am not beneath knowing the exact numbers, because I think there's people like, oh, I don't care about numbers. I'm like, are you joking me? You're lying to yourself. I deeply care. And I notice when they leave, and I tell them, if you leave, I'll find you. I will come to your house and I'll come back. Because I think they need to have a serious look at themselves if they're leaving. Because I'm like, what is it that you're not into crack? Is it? You just, okay. No interest in me because I'm not on a journey. I'm not on a weight loss journey. I'm not on a mental health journey. There's no interest in me.
Do you teach people how to put on makeup?
Say again?
Do you teach people how to put on makeup?
No. Can't you see from my bare face? So I had about 1,800 at the start of lockdown.
Amazing.
I said to my husband, I said, this is my time. Lockdown is my time, because they're at home. My gangbang are at home. They're waiting. They're waiting for crack. They're not at work. They're not busy. They need an outlet. I said to him, I want 5,000 by the end. And so I have over 5,000 now.
Yeah.
And most of them are naturally gotten. The 5,000 are mostly, people have suggested me to other people. But as well as that, I do know my target market. Like I do know that mammies get me, teachers get me, members of the gay community get me. And so I know that's my demographic.
Right.
And I've joined a few mammy things because I'm like, you mammies, you need me and I love you. So and it's been great for me as well, because obviously I get to see various kind of mammy businesses and all that as well. But I think you do also have to be aware of your appeal, who your appeal is. In a world, you would have mass appeal to everybody. I think there are people that are more drawn to other people. The 5,000, it's amazing. And I had about 4,800 there a couple of weeks ago, and it was my birthday. And I did say, lads, I want 5,000 for the birthday. So I did and go out and recruit. And they did. Came up trumps.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you say, when you say that that it was grown organically, that was through, I know you don't consider yourself a maker, but it was through consistently putting yourself in your stories. Is it mostly stories? Was it primarily stories?
Most of mine is stories. I do all through the pandemic. Me and my little girl Polly, we did 100 stories. So we did a live children's story every day at 6:00. So that was on IGTV. So maybe a few people came that way. I think maybe not much though, because towards the end of that, I was like, we're literally reading stories for like 2 people. It was 100. My God, it was so much. But I feel like the 5,000, mine is mainly stories, an occasional post. And the post is usually like something that is bugging me about either mammy guilt or just in general, that I need to have a little rant. And then you find a rant, people are like, oh my God, I'm feeling exactly the same way. And I think as well, I do interact with the people that get onto me, because I think it takes a lot to get onto some randomer that you don't know.
Sure.
And to kind of engage in their life and their world, that it takes a bit. I would very rarely someone myself. So I mean,
it sounds like you. So it's consistent content, but also it's that you are actually developing relationships with your audience.
Totally, and I'm accessible to these people. Are lovely, normal humans, exactly the same as me. I want to be accessible to them, and I want to be able to chat to them as well. And I've met lots of them. Before the pandemic, Mahon Point was just I just go to Mahon Point for a walk so that people would say hi to me. Where they are. That's where the mammies are. Right. They're waiting for me. Yeah. And I'd be just walking up, I'd be disgusted. I went to Mahon Point and nobody said hi. I'm like, you're joking me. Nobody said hi to me today. That's a disaster. But I feel like you do have to engage with them and also appreciate them. And I feel like there are people that have like tens of thousands of followers, but that they're not interactive followers. And so like that's a lot of mine are having the chats. And I think they're building up a bigger connection there because they're, you know, they know you're a real person. You're not just some, like, I don't consider myself a blogger or anything. You're accessible. I'm just a comedian that's accessible. That's it, I think.
And so how many stories, like how often were you going live in your stories?
Like my stories just happen throughout the day when I get a fit. Right. And we obviously have this accidental thing where we're running Tribulgan. No offense to the real Tribulgan.
I absolutely hate to admit this, but I thought early on that you had somehow actually gotten yourself locked in at Tribulgan.
Somebody else said to me, they were like, how could you see Porky Queeve out the window? Sorry, both of my children are suddenly, one of my children is here.
Oh, hello.
Hello, Alfie. Say hi. You don't belong here. I'm like that guy on the news. Do you remember the guy on the news?
Yeah.
But he pushed his children out of the room, whereas I would never do that. Tribulgan, somebody else said that. They were like, how can she see Porky Queeve from Tribulgan? It makes no sense. And Tribulgan was a complete fluke because I went, the first day of the pandemic, I went and I got a load of art supplies for the kids. And so then I started on Instagram going, we're doing Kiddies Club. And then Kiddies Club turned into, we're doing Kiddies Club in Tribulgan. And then Shane came in, my husband, and I was like, here's Fun Phil, he's in charge of activities. So at no point was it planned. It just kind of escalated. And then I did all these things that I thought were amazing content. I did a version of Fair City, a version of Coronation Street, a live Coronavirus the musical, and I thought all of them would take off, but it was people getting on to me about Tribulgan, and I thought Tribulgan was neither here nor there. I was like, that's just what I do during the day. Like I did lives, and they were all improvised, but I was like, this is like COVID Nation Street is amazing. But people didn't care less. I stopped doing them, and not a single person said anything to me. If I didn't do a day at Tribulgan, I'd have somebody on going, what's after happened to Tribulgan? So it's so interesting because what you think is going to be your brilliant content as well is actually not.
That's
so when
really interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Tried to make content, the audience were like, nah. I mean, they were into it, but they weren't like, I was like, it's going to be brilliant now. But it was
it's true because I mean, I couldn't even tell you why or what it was, but like there was just something compelling about this concept of being trapped into Tribulgan. Yeah.
No. And then for ages, it was only the staff in Tribulgan. And then I suddenly was like, oh my God, we could have visitors. And now at the moment, there's about 10 of them and I can't get rid of any of them because people are attached to different ones.
Yeah.
So there's Americans with us. There is a Dublin family who are proving very divisive. And there's the gang. There's this group of older women. Like, why are they in Tribulgan? It makes no sense. And there's a love story going on. And I just can't keep track of it all. But I threatened to close it the other day in the gangbang. We're like, don't you dare, you can't close this down. So it's just mad. Like I could spend ages, this is why I improvise, I could spend ages coming up with something.
Yeah.
People won't care. It's the accidental day-to-day stuff that people are all about because I think they know it's just me having the crack. I think that's what makes the difference.
Right. And also I just want to say what I think of it as well. I have no idea why it is hilarious, but myself and Marcy were just in tears laughing at the songs at the window.
Not really?
Yeah.
How funny.
Yeah.
So funny now because they're divisive enough. They started as me just belting. I think it was because I lived in Ballycotton, so I wanted, when we moved here, I was like, oh my God, I can see Cork out my window. And then it ended up turning into people getting on to me for birthday requests. And then for a while I was like genuinely singing and I was like, oh no, this started off as messing. But every now and again a song bursts out of me and I feel the window is very appropriate. But a lot of people are really into Thoughts from the Loo as well, which is just literally me sitting on the loo having thoughts. It's just hard to know.
Yeah.
I think if you're doing it all mine is all to keep myself entertained and happy. And it is an absolute bonus that it keeps other people happy as well. But I'm not going out to I don't spend my days going, right, time now to do a bit of work. It's not work at all. And I've had a few people get on to me as well saying, oh my God, how does Shane put up with you? I felt that's so
oh my God.
I'm like, Shane knew what he was getting into. and is delighted. Like, who wouldn't be thrilled to have this messer around all the time? Now, though there are bleak moments as well, but we don't put them up. But like, I don't know. It's just me having the crack, really. I think you can tell on Instagram if it's authentic or not as well. Like, if it's fake, you're going to be allergic. And there are going to be people like that probably hate my face. That's fine. You know, the way sometimes you just don't enjoy.
That's just the world, isn't it? Yeah, you can't keep everyone happy. Yeah.
No, not at all. And there's loads of people I hate their face for no reason. I'm like, why do I hate that? And you can learn to love a face. Recently, I've hated faces and actually learned to love them. I'm like, oh, good, this is growth.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And just to compare, like, so I'm just curious because, like, you're nurturing your audience, you're consistently putting content out there, and your audience is growing organically as a result. With the Cccahoots on Facebook, was it a similar journey, or was there a different method of developing that audience?
I feel with Cccahoots, we just put out sketches and people like the sketches and then they travel. And like the first sketch we put out was Mindfulness, which I don't think very many people have seen. It was filmed in my parents' house by Sean O'Connor, actually. And that was the very, very first one that went out. And people were just kind of into it, I think. And people would have followed Cccahoots in the early days because they knew us all individually. But it was just kind of word of mouth. And I think the difference with Cccahoots was we were putting out, they were high quality sketches to look at as well as everything else. You know, it wasn't just us on our phones or anything. It was proper, cinematography, really, to be arsed about it. So they looked a bit different. They looked a bit special. And I think you could feel the kind of electric vibe between between the three of us, like a real friendship and a love kind of bubbling under the surface the whole time. And the fact that we were always on the edge of laughing ourselves, the fact that we were clearly enjoying each other's input and stuff, I feel, and Tyke used to always say that it's very rare that you have a sketch group that has a girl in it, which is obviously appalling, but it's always nice to see the dynamic of having an actual girl as opposed to guys playing girls. And I think it was just word of mouth. It's so long ago, but it did just kind of travel. Very similar in terms of, organic, putting content out there, and being accessible. Being nice. We're not a dose. Yeah. Like, I think there are people who make their followers follow them because they hate them a bit. And you're like, what's this stupid one up to now? And that's terrible because that follower, they're just hating on you. Whereas I feel like people do like us. And I feel like people follow us because, or us individually and collectively, because we're nice. We're not a dose.
Sure. Yeah.
For the most part. We can be a dose, but who can't?
Who can't, yeah. And so you mentioned there about it being unusual for a comedy troupe to have a female member.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you had a post on your Twitter about some of the things you come up against.
Yeah, like
a woman in comedy.
Irish comedy is in a tough place for women at the moment. And while I would never be a voice, like I don't ever nothing bad has happened to me, right? Thank God nothing bad has happened to me. There are people after coming forward in the Irish comedy world, male, female, and everything, who have had an awful time, have been sexually abused. And this is a bit like the wake of the feminist Me Too movement, which I said to you at the time, I was very much like, I don't know, I don't, is that my experience? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And actually I just feel like that's not good enough at the moment, that as a woman in comedy, it is certainly difficult at times. You're constantly having to justify your place. And this is not an anti-male thing. And I think as women as well, we can be quite bitchy. We can be quite competitive. And I've had to look inside myself and say, have I been supportive of female comics on nights that we've been on together? Have I been nice, or have I been like, well, I'm the headliner, so see you in a minute, 7 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in,
sure.
you have I made girls feel comfortable, or young males, or anyone? Has everyone felt comfortable that's worked with me? And I'd like to think they have, but I definitely think I could go more out of my way to be supportive and protect young women. I think at the moment in the comedy scene, the problem is that some of the people that hold the keys of the power are nasty little predators. And so, I can see why they would be enticed to be in charge of clubs and stuff. But my thing, I haven't experienced any sexual abuse or anything in the comedy scene, but partly because I was married and in my 30s when I started. At no point was I, young and single and vulnerable, which is terrible. Like, it's terrible that would make things different.
Yeah.
But what I've encountered is a kind of inherent thing about women not being funny, both from comedians and audience members. Like, regularly, you'd get asked, "Are you funny?" And I'm like, "I am, yeah. I don't need." Like, would you ask Tommy Tiernan, is he funny? Like, and then you get a lot of audience members will come up to you and go, "Oh my God, you're actually funny," and the implication is even though you're a girl, and stuff like. You'd be told to steer clear of period jokes, right? Even though I've had to listen to 10 men in their manky t-shirts giving me 7 minutes about wanking. And I'm like, and I have to stay away from period jokes, but I have to listen to this. Like,
crazy.
What I have is the feeling that my audience will be predominantly female. You would never ever assume that about a male comic. You would assume kind of half and half, that a girl can equally find boys' topics or whatever funny. But there is a sense that only girls will enjoy girls' comedy, and that's not true. And when I'm on stage, I can see it. I've often called it out. There's always, at all of my gigs, a cranky man sitting up the front with his arms crossed, going like, "Fuck this one now," right? And always, I say to him at the start, I said, "I see you. I can see you with your arms crossed and you look allergic." I said, "I'll break you by the end of it." I said, "You'll look certain of it." And they more often than not, I will win them over, but they can always quite like, "You won't." I'm like, "Oh, I will. I don't know why he keeps going to my gig. There's one cranky man, please." Oh, he's obviously a big fan. But like, it's unfortunate that there is a constant underbelly of like, "Well, are you funny?" And as well, a big pet peeve of mine is people are often like, "Well, how do you juggle having kids and being a comedian?" I'm like, there are male comedians that have 4 and 5 kids. And nobody asks them because the assumption is their little mammy is at home minding the kids. Are you joking me? Shane is more than capable of minding the kids, and actually being a comedian is a fairly all right job with kids because the kids are in bed when you're gigging.
Sure.
So lots of nights I put the kids to bed and then go out and do my gig. So it's just, and I'm guilty of it too. I have definitely in the past been like, considered myself extraordinary because I'm a funny woman. That's terrible. Or I've been I'm quick to be down chips on females, and whereas I'm much more accepting of men, and that's inherent in myself. So I have to call that out in myself and actively go out of my way to be supportive of women, because I feel it's a bit like they're saying now that you can't just be not racist, you have to be anti-racist and actively kind of say that's racist and stop that. It's the same with anti-female rhetoric, or you're not a funny woman. You have to be, and the same, like when you're standing around in a club and there's 7 lads and 2 girls, and the lads are like talking sexual banter and stuff, and you're meant to be okay with it. Like, it's not necessarily directed at you, but it's kind of scummy talk. Like, I feel I should be in a position to go, "Here, lads, what is this?" And equally, the men should also be like, "Let's not talk about this. This is yuck." Because why do I have to be okay with it?
Yeah.
And so instead of just standing there and being like, "Oh yes, very funny there what you said about your willy," you should be able to say, "That's inappropriate. I don't want you to talk about that." And also the problem is, every night when a woman does her job in comedy, she's justifying herself. She's going up and beating the odds by being good. Like, I've been at gigs where there's been men in front of me. I'm the headliner. There's been men do gigs. And they're fine. They've done fine performances. And then I go up and storm it, right? Break the room apart with the laughter. Yeah. And when you come down, the lads are all like, "Hey, man, well done, bro. You're so brilliant." And then they ignore me. And I'm like, are you that jealous that you can't say, "Well done"?
Yeah.
Like, and patting themselves on the back for jokes that I've heard 1,000 times. Do you know what I mean? Material, but there's also definitely in the X Factor, maybe you don't know, Frank, you don't strike me as the X Factor type, but
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Simon Cowell used to say things like, in the audition stages, somebody would go in and sing, and Simon Cowell would be like, you just can't sing. The greatest kindness I can give you is to tell you just can't sing. It's the same with comedians. They should be told, you're rubbish. You need to never do this again. But in open mics and stuff, people just get their 7 minutes, then they get 10 minutes, then they get 15 minutes. Sure. They're not better. Their material is shite, and they look like they haven't washed. And I'm like, it's not good enough. We should aim for higher standards, and you should on merit. I equally, sorry, I'm very, very preachy now, but equally, I have also been put on all-female lineups, and the club has been like, we're putting you on an all-female lineup, as in like, we have done this great service to the world now, we're putting on all women. I don't want to be in an all-female lineup. I want to be on a lineup where I think each of the comics is gas.
Yeah.
I might find them all laugh out loud hilarious, but I want to be on a lineup where I'm like, that person is great, that person always goes down well. I don't care what gender they are. I just want it to be on merit. If you're funny, you get the gig. And if you're shite, you get told to stay at home and have a wash. We have to address it. We have to address it. And there's obviously much worse, but that's the kind of minor stuff that's going on in the background the whole time.
Sure. Yeah. Lockdown also disrupted your plans for the People's Princess, didn't it?
Poor old People's Princess. Another blow for the People's Princess. Yes, it was due to be on the 14th of March in the Everyman. And I was bawling, crying on the Thursday because I didn't know whether it was going ahead, and I didn't want it to go ahead.
Right.
I was petrified that it would have to, because it wouldn't have been my call to pull it.
Right.
I remember on the phone to my mum going, I just don't want it to happen, because first of all, half the crowd wouldn't have turned up. And second of all, if anyone had gotten sick and it had been at my gig, I'd have just been devastated.
So, and I mean, if it wasn't sold out, it was certainly like it was all but sold out, wasn't it?
There was only about, I'd say, maximum 20 to 30 tickets left. And they would have gone, I think, as well. But the sales just stopped towards, because that was a really dodgy week. It was just before lockdown was announced. So I was on to Julie and the Everyman. She was so supportive, and she was waiting to hear, and we were all waiting to hear. And then I was driving out to collect my little girl, and I heard Leo on the radio saying something like gatherings under whatever number. And I was like, well, that's what's gone anyway. So then we rescheduled it for July, but we never announced it. And obviously it became apparent that wouldn't happen. So I asked Julie, could we move it to next year? And so we did, but I asked her, could I do 2 nights? And she said, you can. So I don't know yet when it'll be, but hopefully I'll do 2 nights. And hopefully there'll be stupid social distancing.
Yeah, because that would be a killer for comedy. I was thinking about that, about how, there's certain things you can experience, and actually there's certain things that I'd like to go see, and I'd quite like to have the space around me. But comedy, you kind of need to be laughing with the person next to you, don't you? You do. And okay, you could play to a venue at half capacity, of course, but ideally the half would be squished in together. You'd sell out downstairs at the Everyman first. Yeah. That obviously wouldn't be the case to be very spread out. You definitely do need that kind of rolling sense of we're all laughing this together. Yeah, you kind of give each other permission to enjoy it. Exactly. Yeah. The loudest laugher gives everyone else the permission. Thankfully, my husband is a very loud laugher, so usually it's a good bar. But as well, for smaller clubs, we regularly gig upstairs in the Roundy. I mean, that's not going to be feasible at the moment. Sure. Though I do think when it becomes feasible, I am very optimistic that people will be dying to get back to things and wanting to go to stuff. Who knows? But that would be my hope. But yeah, comedy, you need the crowd. The one thing I thought about, we did the improv panto in the Opera House, and I'm like, we never, it's never fully sold out. It's always very close. We've about 700. But I'm like, improv is about improv in the Opera House. You could pull that off with social distancing. You definitely could. I don't know, would it be worth it to open the Opera House? But right. I'm like, with our, 700, space them out. Maybe don't let them have the drinks. It could be done. We just have to see. But I'm optimistic that things will pick up. But as well, about the gig in the Everyman, I wasn't ready, Frank, if I'm honest. And I think I knew it wasn't going to happen. And that last week where you kind of pull everything together
for some reason I couldn't do it. I was sitting at the kitchen table and I was trying to get the set in my head and, you know, make the links between all the parts, and I just wasn't doing it. I had this sense, I'm like, this gig isn't happening. And I think I had that sense from, like, even before there was a word mentioned about coronavirus, I just was like, I can't see this happening. So I'm actually quite relieved it didn't happen, because I wasn't ready. It would have been a great show, but it wouldn't have been slick. It wouldn't have been the kind of, you know, everything, like, I did a joke in the first half that kind of connects back to something in the second half, you know, you really time to make that work.
Sure.
I hadn't done the work, so I was quite glad that it was cancelled.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm delighted to hear that there's a fairly definite plan to reschedule it, and that and yeah, I'm sure it will just sell out straight away again when the dates are announced.
The hope. The gangbang now need to put their money where their mouth is. Well, like, we're all going on a big gangbang night out. Well,
give me a heads up beforehand so that I can get a ticket before it sells out.
I'm saying you're not a member of the gangbang friend.
No, I am, but I want to be the first to hear.
Yes. Okay. Good. Yeah, it'll be brilliant when it happens. It'll be like the best party ever. But
yeah,
there's no point in doing it this year. It'll be just getting my hopes up and then crushing them again. So we'll do it next year.
Yeah.
Will be.
This has been, it's just been a fantastic chat. Absolutely brilliant. And so informative, so much insight into, I think, you know, building an audience, and definitely the importance of, I think, nurturing your audience is a huge thing.
And I think just if I can add, like, as you get older, like, I'm 35 now, apparently, according to my birth cert, which I find rude. But I think as you get older, you make the choices that make most sense for you.
Yeah.
And in my 20s, I was being an actor, and I was walking the space, and I was sighing out the colour red and all this that I consider to be entirely utterly bollocks. But I did that in my 20s, and then I grew up, and you know, life happened, and I had my priorities changed and all of that. And it has been the greatest pleasure to just decide to be a comedian, and I don't have to pretend to give two shits anymore about pretending, you know, here's the script, Laura, and I want you to do the script as if you're a fish. Like, I don't have to do that anymore. I did it. I did my time. But I do think for anyone listening that's young and wants to, you know, like, how do you make it all happen? Sometimes life just has to happen first. And it doesn't happen in your 20s necessarily. I feel in my 30s I'm much closer to whatever it is happening, but you have to know that you're in the right place at the right time, I think, always. So even though I couldn't have done stand-up as a 21-year-old, I might have been funny, but I don't think I'd have had enough life experience. So I didn't do it until I was in whatever age I was. I don't know what age I was when I started. But, like, I feel like just know that stuff can happen at any age. If it happens to you very young, it's because you're amazing. We're talking about, like, the likes of your man in Normal People or the girl in Normal People or whatever. But, like, just sometimes you have to, like, I've done so much shit. I've been Mrs. Claus at the Douglas Santa, you know, thinking this is high art here now. And I've done lots of tough jobs. I've done many workshops that I pretended to care deeply about. And at the time and then straight away afterwards, I'm like, couldn't give a shit. But it takes a while to find yourself. I feel like I've found my voice in my 30s of, like, I'm doing this. I don't like doing that. Whereas in my 20s, I'm like, I don't like doing that, but I better be seen to be doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's pointless workshop. But that's just me. Other people love that kind of stuff. But I think it's so freeing. Yeah. And I find comedy like this to be able to just be myself now. I don't have to hide behind anything. I'm just like, here I am. If you like me, be part of the gangbang. If you don't, flog off. I don't want to see you. I don't want negativity. I have no interest in feedback. I just want to have the crack. And if you don't want to have the crack with me, then fuck off. As my mother says, off you must fuck. The great Cora Daly special. So I just feel like, don't worry, you'll find your voice. Like, I'd love to go back and do drama and theatre studies now in my 30s. I'd last about 2 weeks because I'd be like, nah, ridiculous. But at the time, I needed it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of like, just hold tough and your real self will emerge, and the stuff you actually want to do and give time to become clearer as you go along. Like when in your 20s, think you say yes to everything, because I'm like, oh, this could be it now. This weird play where I don't say anything. I just shake a shaker in the background. This could make me. So hold tough.
Brilliant. So how do people find you on Instagram if they're not already following you, which they absolutely should be?
They should be Laura Lols Lots, which is the most unfortunate handle, but it's what we're stuck with. And if you find me and leave me, then you'll find me outside your house going, why did you leave me?
Laura, thank you so much. You're absolutely brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Please do subscribe if you haven't already on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you usually listen to podcasts. I'm Frank Prendergast. You can find me on Twitter at FrankieP. And if you're looking for a quick, easy and affordable professional actor's website, please do check out www.mysite.actor. Great. See you next time. Cheers.